Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to introduce the two speakers we have today, Cheah Chun and Yvonne Low, in the fourth session of our Fireside Chat by High Pines Training and Consultancy. So today, our topic is called Is It Legal? Good Business Practices in Commercial Law. So, firstly, we have our host today, Mr. Cheah Chun. He is a chartered accountant by profession with a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and Finance. He is also a fellow member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, FCCA, and the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, MIA, with over 15 years of experience. And secondly, I would like to introduce our special guest today, Yvonne Law, a practicing lawyer with more than a decade of experience. She is the founder of Yvonne Law and Co-Advocates and Solicitors, a legal firm that specializes in corporate and commercial law. Yvonne's wide experience in the legal field include private mergers and acquisitions, regulatory compliance, and real estate matters. She has also advised parties on the structuring of the development, construction, and financing of real estate in Malaysia. Throughout her legal practice, she has and is currently acting for domestic and foreign investors, as well as government linked and public listed companies in real estate matters. Apart from founding and running her own legal practice, she is also the non executive independent director of ICO Group Limited, a company listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to type in the chat below and we'll go through them later on. For now, I would like to pass the floor to our host today, Chun Hao. Welcome to our fireside session. Yvonne, over to you, Chun Hao.
Thank you, Isabel, for the nice introduction. And good to see you today, Yvonne.
Hi, Chanel. My
Hi,
pleasure.
thanks for being with us today. All right, here comes the first question. You have and are still having an illustrious legal career. You certainly have a lot of experience. For the benefit of our audience here, Yvonne, perhaps you could share with us a little more in depth about what you do and the difference between corporate and commercial law.
Right. Let me begin that what do we really do in Yvonne Law Co. We provide legal advisory services to our client from the conception of a business idea to the execution of the plan. And so how do we help them? We actually review and draft their business agreement to make sure that their business interest is protected. And we also sometimes represent our client to be the negotiator to make sure that they get the best deal ever. And we also help owner to determine what is the right structure or the type of agreement that they should enter into. And lastly, we also help them to identify the business risks and try to mitigate some of all these risks so that they are more manageable. So if you do ask me, what's the difference between a corporate and commercial practice that we are talking here? So in corporate law, it is actually a branch of law that covers the companies and the structure. And it governs the shareholder rights, the management of the company, and or its conduct. How do you organize the setting up of your organization or the structure itself? Whereas the commercial side of law, it is mainly governing the commercial transaction or the business deal. Corporate lawyer does not need to be required to be present in court. And you have rightly pointed out, we usually used to present ourselves in the boardroom scene instead. And that is where we present our advice to the senior management or the business owner itself. And as a corporate lawyer, we actually help business owner to identify their business risks and try to put in place the manner how they can mitigate all these risks and let it be properly documented so that everyone is aligned with their business idea. And whereas a litigation lawyer will come in and play a role when there is an ongoing dispute between two parties, or when one side were trying to demand their right to be compensated accordingly. That is where the litigation lawyer will come in the picture. So whereas as a corporate lawyer, we believe that our support is not only mainly on the legal documents, but we also help them to strategize to create a win-win structure that is benefiting for both parties. And to achieve this result, we usually need to be involved in the project at the early conception stage, so that we can give them a more holistic advice on how to achieve the best result and not making any time loss or ended up in a failed investment.
Right. Let's take a look at the pandemic situation. The pandemic and quarantine rules have shifted the ways of doing business for various industries. What are the areas that you had to deal with and advise on the most since the start of the pandemic?
Right. So this pandemic has literally reset how we live, how we work, and how do we do business. And none of the sector that has been spared from this, right? And the real immediate impact that we see now is what it turns out to be a temporary work from home culture has now slowly turned to be a new working culture that we see. And many bosses doesn't believe this flexibility will work before the pandemic. But true enough, with this force of a lockdown that we have over the last few months that we experienced, we have slowly shifting to the new normal, that many more business owners are more willing to adopt new solution, like high pine clouds accounting, to a more proper HR management system to ensure that their business are still ongoing despite lockdown. So now come the next question. How do we control these operational risks or to ensure that such work from home culture are not being abused by your staff? We have all the digital solution, but what we need is a good policy to work alongside with all these solution that we have on hand, and to make sure that the policy will also spell out what the employee ought to obey or commit to be, so that the company has the same direction with them to be ensured that there is no operational risk or minimize any operational risk while they are working from home. But apart from this working from home culture, some client has actually also decided to change their business model or slowly moving to digitalization. In light of this, they are more inclined to outsource their back-end office now. For example, accounting, payroll services, or even logistic. And this is to look at the positive side is to minimize their operational costs. So then we just need to strengthen some of the clauses in the agreement to make sure that our clients' interests are protected while using some of these outsourced services.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot to think about and consider for a company who will be adopting or already adopted work from home policy. Yeah. Right. What are the trends that you are witnessing now in terms of how businesses are operating? Are you witnessing a lot of mergers, acquisitions, and company integration?
Well, the whole key things that we are looking at during this pandemic are how do we survive through this pandemic when everything supplies are shortages, there are lack of demand, no sales and all that. So it make more sense to have more company or business integration, and that's to allow to leverage on their existing process, people's technology, or even their own database in order to stay ahead of competition. Some clients actually prefer to do this business integration instead of M&A, as it speed up the process, so that companies who has been operating manually will now adopt system so that they can automate some of these manufacturing programs, or even to have instill better control on their stocks or even some of their materials that they've been using. And this would have significantly improved their overall efficiency, and that would result in a lower operating cost of the business.
Right. So are these mergers and acquisitions between companies and partnerships even happening more amid the pandemic, or have they slowed down?
I would say that a strategic partnership might be happening more during this pandemic, and whereas M&A exercise was on the slowing down trend. And this is mainly it is because of some few factors that we are seeing here. The restriction of physical movement during the lockdown has caused the due diligence exercise has taken a longer time to be completed. And we are also facing some of the delays in obtaining regulatory approval. And buyers and their board now are more cautious, and they needed more internal justification for deal making in this environment now. And why do we need a more compelling reason, more so why do we need to enter into this M&A exercise? And that boils down also to the negotiation process, as buyer wants to shift to more closing risk term, and whereas seller are trying to seek the comfort that they don't bail out during this pandemic from this whole exercise. And buyer also more concerned now in terms of the valuation. What we see is that post-pandemic or the similar trade that has been transacted prior to the pandemic may not be valued at the same value after the post-pandemic. As we see that some of the business has been badly affected, especially if they are into import and export, due to a lot of external factor that we're looking at, politically or even logistically. They will have increased their cost of production. And all this will have added up to the valuation of this entity itself. And hence, it doesn't give them a good prospect. Why do they need to enter into this merger and acquisition exercise?
I see. The technical legalities can sometimes be overlooked when running a business. What are the common issues businesses face in terms of these technical legalities? Some intentional and some unintentional.
All right. In terms of the technical legalities, when we look at the increase of digitalization transformation, it would require more proper data management system, and also a comprehensive, well thought through personal data privacy policy to safeguard the company interests in managing such big data collection. And as we know, data is the key moving forward, and there's many things that we can monetize from this. And hence, the back-end data management systems need to be clearly looked into, so to minimize the operational risk or any loopholes that may expose to third-party claim. And the recent flash flood that we see, it also has sparks a lot of interest in general liability insurance, that many business owners are not looking at it in a more, I would say, holistic manner when we used to be during post-pandemic or even prior to pandemic. But I think with the recent flash flood, or even we see that the burglary getting into mining, so all this, it is not being covered in our ordinary course of business. But it may, added up some protection if we will have a general liability insurance to cover in the event of fire, burglary, or even flash flood. And this is actually to cover any potential legal fee that brought up by a third-party claim or any infringement or defective product that we are selling actually. And during this pandemic, we also see that many individual or the B40 group has started their own side gig or hustle just to earn extra income. If the business are doing pretty well, I think they should actually consider forming an official business entity. And this is also to protect their own business against their own personal asset if, let's say, things go wrong or any third-party claim against them. And lastly, I also would advise that in terms of compliance, just to make sure that whatever that you are running now, that you have a good and organized license that you have obtained in the course of your business, and to ensure that they are all still valid. And in case that any local authorities requirement or they when they conduct an inspection, so you have all these ready at hand, operational risk to you that you require to be shut down.
Right. So, in a nutshell, what are the best practices that businesses should embrace in terms of corporate and commercial law?
Right. In terms of corporate, like we say, corporate is mainly governing the back-end structure of the company. So building a competent board, it is very important to set the good direction and how the company should move forward. And it is necessary to hire someone that has the skill and abilities to make a sound decision for the company. And more often than not, then we see that many companies now are hiring more professionals like lawyers, accountants to run the seats on the board, so that company are being advised in a sound manner. And with a good solid board member, you will then able to align your company's strategies with your goal. And this, when we say how do we align on this, is how do we identify our company operational risks with a set of policy or internal control SOP that we're looking at. All right. And that will eventually supported by digital solution that we talked about earlier, any cloud accounting or even the HR management side, to make sure that all the resources that the company engage is being accountable and transparent. And all stakeholders are happy to see the result, whether every money that they invest on this solution or system, would it give a productivity in terms of efficiency in managing the operation. And having says that, when your back-end office are in a well-managed, transparent, and also accountable for every cent or dollar that you have invested, then you know what are the roles or obligation that you can negotiate with your strategic partner or even your supplier. And that will box down to how do we define our role or obligation in any general contract that we enter with a third party when we talk about business deal. And when we understand our own operational risks or our company risk-taking appetite, that is where we know that at what limit that we can endure or to take in what kind of production capacity that we can offer to the end user or the client itself. And that sets that what kind of expansion growth that you're looking at as well, and what kind of funding that you need to allow the company to grow even further. So by having all these metrics, that would be able to be a good best practice to combine both corporate and commercial side, that it will give you a holistic approach. What is your internal limit before you even go up to explore what are the opportunity there for you?
Right. I see that you are also familiar with IPO work. How has the IPO landscape been since the pandemic? We would think that 2021 was a slightly better year for the IPO market compared to 2020. Is that right?
Right. So when we look at the statistic back in 2020, it in fact that it is on a declining rate when we compare the similar months in year 2019. And as we move on in this current year 2021, we do see some initial optimism from the rebounding economies. I think this is mainly due to the rollout of the COVID vaccine and also the rolling liquidity from the government stimulus program. And this provided us some strong tailwind. However, the winds started to shift when the surfacing of the recent new threat of Omicron variants and the continuing some of the geopolitical tension. So that has slowed down a bit in Q3 this year on the IPO activities. And whether or not IPO bounce company press the pause button or forge ahead in 2022, we will really need to satisfy a lot of investor demand for a more resilient growth strategies, and also a well articulate on the environmental, social, and governance policy. So, and audit will really bring us back to the back end again that we have discussed earlier. What are the internal policy or the SOP that the company has set a good footing? And that would actually also give a plus point to the investor when they're looking at the new IPO companies that's coming up. But despite on all this, we also see that the valuation plays a role post-pandemic, because many of the business are still not tested yet at the moment that we says that what brings us after this post-pandemic. So they are still be very cautious about the valuation of all these IPO, new emerging market.
Right. We see a decagon like Grab recently listing in the US. And now we see another unicorn, Custom, looking to list in the US as well. These companies are so colorful because they are startups that made it big over the years. Why do you think they choose to list in other countries as opposed to listing in Malaysia? Where does it all started?
Well, to begin with, our Security Commission and Bursa has been doing a fairly good job in the sense that we have a very stringent process in Malaysia just to list in Bursa, and they don't like uncertainty when you come into the market. Whereas other country like US or even Hong Kong Stock Exchange had make it easier to a lot of startups or new player to come in, and hence their requirements are less stringent than our own country. But I also see the plus point. Why would a company like Grab or even Custom are looking elsewhere than Malaysia? It is also because that would attract the consumer attention to their business product and services. And the media presence actually helps them to boost up a lot of all this publicity when they goes into listing in other country. And don't forget, in this country, they are raising in US dollar, and that will strengthen their company's valuations and also capital raising, and that would give them a reasonable cost that available in elsewhere than our own country. So that would give them a lot more boost to go through outside and before they come back and to list in Malaysia again.
Oh, it's great to know this. Right. So, what would you say sets you apart from other corporate and commercial law firms out there?
Well, I would say is that in VLC, we virtually attend clients from entrepreneurs, startups to even listed company. But one thing that is common among them is no matter how big or small your company is, they are bound to be a business risk or potential dispute that may disrupt your business and distract your focus. So part of our job is to take on that burden and to help to solve those legal issues. So we don't really measure our client on how big or small their problem is, so long we can help them to give them a peace of mind for them to focus on their business and growth. They are ever ready to serve.
Right. So, maybe you can let us know where and how we can find you.
All right, you can check us out on our website at www.ylc.legal, and you will see my email and my contact number at the bottom of this screen. So that is where you can reach out to me.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for the insightful conversation, Yvonne. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I'm good. Unless you have more questions for me to be answered today.
No, that's all for now from me. More in the future, I will ask more.
Great.